A desert has always kept its secrets. If you've ever stood under the vast, star-filled sky of New Mexico, you know what I mean. The silence out there is not empty. It's heavy, almost alive. Every sound, the faint rustle of wind, the faraway call of an animal, feels like it carries a message. And in the summer of 1947, one of those messages came crashing down near a place called Roswell. Tonight, you are not just listening to a story. You are stepping into one of the most whispered about nights in human history. The night the skies opened and something or someone fell to earth. Close your eyes. Let the weight of the day fade. Breathe slow. This is your invitation to drift between wake and dream as we walk together through the shadows of Roswell. The year was 1947. America was in transition. The war had ended 2 years earlier, but tension still lingered in the air. Soldiers were coming home, families were rebuilding, and whispers of a Cold War with the Soviet Union were beginning to stir. Radar bases dotted the desert, keeping silent watch on the skies. People trusted what their government told them, but they also knew there were things the government never said out loud. And then it happened. A rancher named Mac Brazel woke one morning to find strange debris scattered across his land. This was no ordinary wreckage. No balloon, no airplane, no machine he had ever seen before. Metallic fragments that seemed to resist burning. Pieces that bent and twisted, but never broke. Symbols etched into surfaces like some kind of forgotten script. He didn't know it then, but by picking up those shards, he was holding the beginning of a story that would ripple across the decades, still alive in our voices right now. Imagine it, a wide stretch of desert land, silence except for the hum of cicadas, and scattered across the dirt, fragments glinting like stars had fallen from the sky. What really fell? That question has never gone away. In the official version, first told quickly, almost carelessly, the Army announced they had recovered a flying disc. Those were their exact words, a flying disc. It was printed in newspapers, spoken on radios. The mystery had already leapt into the public's imagination. But then, within hours, that statement was retracted. The disc was gone. Now, they said, it had only been a weather balloon. A simple mix-up, nothing unusual, nothing to see. And yet, people remembered what they had seen. Farmers, ranchers, townsfolk, even military personnel. Too many witnesses, too many details, too much strangeness. And so began the Roswell mystery, a puzzle of fragments, contradictions, and silences, a story that refuses to fade. As you listen, let the rhythm of this story settle into you. Slow your breath. Notice how the deeper you sink into the words, the lighter your body begins to feel. Because Roswell is not just history. It is an atmosphere, a vibration, something that asks you to lean closer, even as you drift into sleep. The desert of Roswell, the wreckage that wasn't supposed to exist, the statements that contradicted themselves, and the lingering question, what really crashed in 1947? This is more than a bedtime story. It is a map into the unknown. Some say it was a craft, not ours, not theirs, but from somewhere else. A machine designed for skies beyond our own. Some claim bodies were found, small, fragile, not human in any familiar sense, wrapped quickly, hidden quietly, carried away before curious eyes could gather too many details. Others whisper it was all an experiment, a military test, cloaked in secrecy, never meant to be understood by the public. A distraction, perhaps, a trick of timing. But ask yourself, why would a simple balloon require so much silence, so much effort to erase? Close your eyes deeper now. Picture the desert at night, the stars overhead like an endless ocean. the wind brushing across your skin. And somewhere out there, beyond the reach of normal, lies a truth humanity has not yet been brave enough to face. Roswell is more than a place. It is a symbol, a reminder that we are not in control of everything we think we are. That sometimes things slip through. Sometimes mysteries land right in our own backyard. The rancher picked up the wreckage. The army took it away. The newspapers printed it. The government silenced it. But the story never stopped moving. It's been carried in whispers, in testimonies, in the eyes of those who swear they saw too much to ever believe the weather balloon explanation. And here you are, decades later, still listening, still wondering, still sensing that what fell in Roswell was more than steel and fire. It was a signal that the skies are not empty, that maybe we are not alone. And as you listen, as your breath softens, I want you to know, you are part of this story now. You are part of the chain of witnesses, the chain of listeners, the chain of seekers, who refuse to let the silence close in fully. This is what makes Roswell eternal. Not just the debris, not just the files, but the curiosity, the courage to keep asking. And tonight, as you relax deeper into rest, I invite you to join that lineage, the lineage of those who stay awake in wonder, even as their eyes close in sleep. Because while your body rests, your mind is free to roam, free to imagine, free to follow the stars into questions no one has fully answered. And as you do, let me ask you something. If you believe the truth is out there, if you believe stories like these matter, if you feel the pull of these mysteries, stay with us. Subscribe so you don't miss the next journey. And even share your thoughts below. Tell us, what do you believe fell in Roswell? A balloon? A craft? Something else entirely? Your voice keeps this conversation alive. Now, back to the desert. Back to the fragments in the sand. Think of them. Strange metals, glinting in the sunlight. Light as balsa wood, but impossible to cut. Pieces that seem to hum faintly, as though holding a memory of the sky itself. Locals touched them, examined them, and found themselves both fascinated and unsettled. And then soldiers arrived. Trucks, uniforms, authority. The fragments were gathered, packed into crates, shipped away under tight guard. Witnesses were told to stay quiet, and many did. But silence does not erase memory. The rancher told his story. His neighbors whispered it. Children grew up repeating it. And across generations, the legend of Roswell only grew. Tonight, you are sitting in that circle too, hearing the tale, passing it forward, adding your own breath to the mystery. What really fell? Was it a visitor? Was it a secret? Was it a mistake? No matter which version you believe, the fact remains, something happened, something undeniable. And because of that night, the world has never looked at the sky the same way again. The desert still waits, silent, patient, and if you listen close enough, maybe you can still hear the echoes of that crash, drifting on the wind. Sleep if you need to, dream if you wish to, but remember, Roswell is calling, and this is only the beginning. The desert does not forget. When the sun sets over Roswell, shadows stretch long and the sky deepens into a velvet curtain of stars. Out there, time feels different. The events of July 1947 may seem far away, but in the desert, they are always near. The silence holds them. The air remembers. Mac Brazel, the rancher who stumbled upon the wreckage, could not have known how deeply his discovery would ripple through history. He was an ordinary man, living an ordinary life, raising cattle, fixing fences, moving with the rhythm of the land. But on that strange morning, he found himself at the center of something extraordinary. He described metallic strips that would not dent, sticks that wouldn't burn, foil-like sheets that folded but would not crease. Some witnesses later claimed they saw markings, almost like hieroglyphs, strange alien symbols etched into the material itself. Think of that for a moment. Imagine standing there, the desert wind brushing across your face, the morning sun rising behind the mountains, and at your feet, scattered across the dirt, pieces of a puzzle that didn't belong to any machine you had ever seen. Would you feel awe, fear, wonder, perhaps all three at once? Brazel did what anyone might do. He gathered some of the debris, took it into town, and showed others. Among them were military personnel. The strange fragments quickly drew interest, too much interest. Soon Roswell's local base, the Roswell Army Airfield, became involved, and within hours, the story shifted from a local curiosity to a national mystery. The first press release came quickly. The Army announced they had recovered a flying disc. Think about how shocking that must have been in 1947, just 2 years after the Second World War, in a time when jets were still new and rockets were still more dream than reality. The idea of a flying disc was beyond imagination, yet it came straight from the military itself. For a brief moment, the world tilted. Newspapers printed the headline, "RAAF captures flying saucer on ranch in Roswell region." Radios echoed the news. Conversations buzzed with excitement. People believed, for one flickering instant, that the truth had finally stepped out of the shadows. But then, silence. Almost immediately, the statement was retracted. New words were spoken, new explanations given. It wasn't a flying disc, they said. It was only a weather balloon. Harmless. Ordinary. Nothing unusual. And just like that, the door closed. Or so they thought. Because the human mind does not forget easily. Once the idea is planted, once the vision of a flying disc is spoken aloud, it cannot be erased by an official denial. Instead, it grows, it lingers, it raises questions. Why issue such a bold statement in the first place? Why call it a disc at all, if it was only a balloon? And why did those who handled the wreckage insist that the material was unlike anything they had ever known? Sleep deeper now. Let these questions echo softly in your mind. You don't have to answer them tonight. You only have to feel them, like ripples across still water. The Roswell story could have ended there. A strange event explained quickly, filed away in history's drawers. But it didn't end. It refused to, because witnesses talked, quietly at first, then more openly, and what they described was not consistent with a balloon. Major Jesse Marcel, one of the first military men to examine the wreckage, later spoke about what he saw. He described metals that were feather-light but impossibly strong, fragments that carried a memory, returning to their original shape when bent. He knew military technology. He had handled balloons, planes, weapons, but this was not that, and Marcel was not alone. Other accounts trickled out over the years. Civilians, soldiers, even undertakers in Roswell claimed to have been called in under strange circumstances. Some whispered of bodies, small, childlike, with features not quite human, taken away under guard, never to be seen again. Of course, skeptics scoffed. They called it folklore, exaggeration, misremembered details. But even folklore comes from somewhere. Even whispers have roots. Ask yourself this: if it was truly just a balloon, why were so many told to stay silent? Why the intimidation? Why the retractions? Secrets do not shroud ordinary things. Secrets cover truths too heavy for daylight. As you let your breath soften, allow the weight of that thought to rest with you. Secrets only exist because there is something worth hiding. The people of Roswell knew this. They carried their memories quietly, like embers beneath ash, waiting for the right moment to flare again. And flare they did. In the 1970s and beyond, Researchers, journalists, and truth seekers began collecting testimonies. Stories that had been whispered in kitchens and backyards began to surface in books, documentaries, interviews. Piece by piece, the Roswell cover-up unraveled. What emerged was not a single story, but a tapestry of accounts. Wreckage that defied explanation, bodies that could not be identified, military silence that seemed louder than words. Roswell became not just an event, but a symbol of how truth can be buried and yet still rise. Tonight, as you rest deeper, know this: your curiosity is part of that rising. Every ear that listens, every heart that wonders, every voice that questions, all of it adds strength to the story that refuses to die. Perhaps that is why you are here now, because you sense that this is not simply about the past. It is about the present, about the skies above you, the secrets still kept, the mysteries still unfolding. Roswell was the beginning, and maybe it was also a warning. What if the truth is larger than we imagine? What if it asks more of us than we are prepared to give? Breathe. Settle into that thought. Do not resist it. Let it drift through you like the wind over the desert sands. Because the truth, like the desert, is patient. It waits. And sometimes, when the world is quiet, it speaks. The wreckage, the press release, the retraction, the silence, all of it forms a pattern, a rhythm, a story whispered in half-truths. And yet, through it all, the stars above Roswell continue to shine, as if watching, as if knowing. Maybe one day, the full truth will emerge. Until then, we have fragments, testimonies, shadows, and sometimes, shadows say more than light. Sleep now, if you wish. Drift into the comfort of not knowing everything. Because in that mystery lies peace. In that silence lies wonder. And as you rest, remember this: Roswell is not just about what fell. It is about what rises in you when you hear it. Curiosity, imagination, the courage to wonder. You are part of that story now, and the desert remembers. The cover-up did not begin in the desert. It began in the halls of power. When Roswell's fragments were gathered and carried away, they did not vanish into nothing. They were taken somewhere, hidden, cataloged, studied, behind locked doors, under military watch, far from the curious eyes of ranchers and townsfolk. And that is where the silence grew. In 1947, the world was shifting. The war had ended only 2 years earlier. Nations were rebuilding. Secrets were currency. Intelligence was power. The United States had just tested and unleashed the atomic bomb. The Cold War was beginning to stir. Every breakthrough, every discovery, every whisper of advanced technology was guarded like treasure. Imagine then what it would mean to recover an object not of this earth. Would the government rush to admit it, to share it with the world, or would they lock it away, fearing what it might reveal, fearing what enemies might do if they knew? The official explanation was simple: a weather balloon. Later, decades later, it was expanded to say it had been part of Project Mogul, a secret program using balloons to detect Soviet nuclear tests. On paper, it sounded reasonable, plausible, even tidy. But tidy explanations do not erase untidy memories. The ranchers who handled the wreckage did not describe balloon material. The soldiers who saw the debris did not describe rubber and sticks. The undertaker, who was allegedly called to supply small coffins, did not believe they were meant for human remains. And Jesse Marcel, loyal to his duty, kept silent for decades. But silence does not mean forgetting. When he finally spoke, years later, he said the words with clarity: "It was not a balloon." Pause there. Let those words drift over you. It was not a balloon. How many times in history have we been told something ordinary to disguise something extraordinary? How many times has truth been wrapped in a blanket of normalcy so no one dares peek inside. Sleep is not just for the body, it is for the mind. And yet tonight, as you sink deeper, your mind is awake in new ways, awake to patterns, awake to questions. Think of the timeline. On July 8th, 1947, the Army declared they had recovered a flying disc. By July 9th, the story had changed. Within 24 hours, a miracle of discovery had become a mistake of identification. Do we truly believe trained military personnel confused alien metals with balloon scraps? Or do we sense something else? A decision made quickly, a cover story rushed into place. The desert wind whispers, decide for yourself. Many locals in Roswell spoke of intimidation, of being told to keep quiet, of warnings whispered with weight. In small towns, silence can be forced, and for decades it was. But silence cracks, memory leaks. In the 1980s, the dam broke. Witnesses who had kept their stories buried began to speak. Some claimed they saw trucks, convoys, guarded crates leaving Roswell under the cover of night. Others swore they glimpsed bodies, small and fragile, their heads too large for their frames. Perhaps these were only tales, grown larger with time. But perhaps not. For every debunker who shouted balloon, there was another who whispered truth. And those whispers traveled far. Roswell became more than an event. It became a mirror held up to power, asking, what do you hide? What do you fear we will see? The truth is that secrecy itself is suspicious. When an explanation requires decades of adjustment, from balloon to weather device to nuclear project, suspicion grows, not fades. Why so many layers of story? Why not a single clear truth? The deeper you drift, the clearer it becomes. Truth does not need revision. Lies do. Let that sink in. Truth does not shift with time. Truth does not bend to convenience. Truth does not need 20 explanations. Truth stands still. And so Roswell still stands. Imagine the objects in that wreckage. Metallic shards that could not be burned. Thin sheets that sprang back no matter how tightly crumpled. Beams marked with strange glowing symbols. These are not toys of wind and air. They are relics of another kind. If you hold them in your imagination, can you feel their weight or their weightlessness? Can you sense how they would alter everything we know, if only they were placed before us now? Maybe that is why they were hidden, because to reveal them would be to admit that humanity is not alone, that our skies are not empty, that our place in the universe is smaller and stranger than we dare believe. And yet, in your dreams tonight, you can hold them. You can walk the desert, bend to the sand, and lift a fragment of something not made by human hands. You can turn it in the moonlight, see the reflections shimmer, feel its hum beneath your skin. That is the gift of story. Even when truth is hidden, your mind can find it. The Roswell cover-up is more than a mystery. It is a lullaby of questions. It sings us into sleep, while reminding us that beyond our world, other worlds may be near. So rest now. Feel your breath slow. Hear the echo of Marcel's words. It was not a balloon. And know that tonight, in your dreams, the desert waits. The stars wait. And maybe the truth itself waits, just beyond the veil of sleep. When you close your eyes tonight, imagine the desert roads of New Mexico. Long stretches of silence, broken only by the hum of cicadas, the sigh of wind through dry brush, and the faint rumble of distant engines. Convoys move under cover of darkness. Trucks with tarps pulled tight, headlights dimmed. Armed guards watching the shadows. Something precious, something dangerous, is being carried away from the crash site. Something the world was not meant to see. What was under those tarps? What rested inside those crates? Some say only scraps of balloon. Others whisper of materials that could bend light, metals that resisted fire, fragments that defied gravity. And still others, always others, claim that among those crates were bodies. Small, strange bodies, not of human origin. The image is haunting. A crash site in the desert, debris scattered under the moon. And within that debris, not only technology, but life, or the remnants of life, creatures who had traveled light years, only to fall upon desert sand. Think of the silence of that night. Soldiers gathering fragments, officers whispering orders, a blanket of secrecy descending before dawn. By the time the sun rose, the desert had been cleared, the evidence had been hidden, and only whispers remained. But whispers are powerful. They travel, they multiply. Roswell became not just a story, but a seed planted in the minds of millions. What if we are not alone? What if we never were? The government's official explanations grew like vines around that seed. First a weather balloon, then a secret nuclear detection project. But no matter how thick the vines, the seed kept growing. The story lived on. Why? Because memory does not obey silence. Jesse Marcel remembered. The rancher remembered. The nurse at the base hospital who allegedly saw unusual bodies remembered. And decades later, they spoke. Quietly, sometimes reluctantly, but they spoke. And every voice added to the weight of the mystery. Can you feel that weight as you drift deeper into calm? The weight of too many details, too many witnesses, too many contradictions. It presses gently against your thoughts, like a stone on soft earth. History has patterns. Cover-ups have fingerprints. Consider this. In times of great secrecy, information is not destroyed, but dispersed. Some pieces locked away, some buried, some leaked in fragments. Roswell is like a shattered mirror. Each witness holds a shard. None holds the whole. But if we gather the shards, what picture emerges? We see a craft, not of human design. We see material unknown to science in 1947. We see a rush to suppress, to distract, to replace the story with something smaller, safer. And we see the long shadow of silence that followed. Why silence? Why fear? Perhaps because to admit the truth would mean admitting vulnerability. If beings exist who can cross the stars, then borders and armies and weapons become small. Power shifts, control wavers. The leaders of 1947 may have asked themselves, how would humanity react if they knew? Panic? Awe? Unity? Division? Perhaps they feared the answer, and so, secrecy. But secrecy does not erase truth. It only delays it. And tonight, as you listen, you can feel the truth pressing closer, like footsteps in the sand, just behind you, like a shadow stretching across the desert floor, like a hum in the still night air, too low to name, too steady to ignore. The Roswell cover-up is not only about a crash. It is about a choice. The choice to conceal instead of reveal, to hide instead of share, to guard instead of trust. What was hidden then may still be hidden now, locked in vaults, stored in hangars, studied in silence by hands we will never see. And yet, in the quiet of night, the question remains. If they found something extraordinary, why not tell us? Breathe slowly now. Inhale. Exhale. Let the question drift through you like smoke. If they found something extraordinary, why not tell us? Perhaps the answer lies in fear. Perhaps it lies in greed. Perhaps it lies in a vision of control that cannot risk being broken. But perhaps, just perhaps, it lies in something else. What if they knew that humanity was not ready? That in 1947, so soon after war, so deep in fear, so raw with division. We were not yet prepared to face the larger truth. And what if that is still true today? Do we dare imagine the scale of it? Other worlds, other minds, other civilizations, technologies far beyond ours. Would we embrace it? Or would we weaponize it, like everything else? These are questions that stretch across decades, questions that turn a simple desert crash into the most enduring mystery of modern times. And as you rest, drifting between waking and dreaming, you can feel the weight of those questions dissolve into calm. They do not demand answers. They invite wonder. Close your eyes. Picture the desert again. The stars above, the sand below, the silence stretching forever. And somewhere, hidden from sight, the remains of something extraordinary. Maybe it was only a balloon. Maybe it was only a project. But maybe it was a visitor. And maybe that visitor still lingers, not in body, but in the questions that will not die. The truth, after all, is not easily buried. Even under sand, even under silence, even under 70 years of denial. Truth breathes, truth waits. And tonight, as you drift deeper, you can hear it. Soft, steady, like a heartbeat under the desert floor. A reminder that what really crashed in 1947 may still echo in our skies today. ... Imagine you are back in 1947. The world is simpler, but also unsettled. The war has ended, yet the shadow of the atomic bomb lingers over every headline. Nations rebuild, secrets multiply, and the desert sky becomes a canvas for strange reports. Pilots see disks, farmers hear hums, radar screens flicker with unexplained traces. And in Roswell, something falls. For decades, the official explanation shifts, bends, reshapes itself. At first, a flying disc, then a balloon, later a secret military program, each explanation like a mask placed over the same face. Each mask convincing for a moment, but always slipping, always cracking. Why do the cracks remain? Because too many people remember something different. Jesse Marcel remembers unusual debris, strong yet feather light, metal that could bend without breaking, then return to its shape, a material beyond 1947 science. Rancher Mac Brazel remembers the field, littered, scattered, filled with pieces that no ordinary balloon could explain. Others remember small details, symbols etched on beams, fragments that shimmered strangely in the light. A silence among soldiers, heavy and unnatural, as if they knew more than they could say. And then there are the whispers of bodies, always whispers, not shouted, not printed in bold headlines, but murmured quietly, cautiously. A nurse, a mortician, base personnel. Hints of small forms carried in haste, of strange autopsies whispered behind closed doors. Did it happen? Or was it born from fear and rumor? No one can say for certain. But what is certain is this: the whispers never died. They became the heartbeat of the Roswell mystery. Pause for a moment. Listen to that heartbeat. Steady, soft, a pulse beneath the surface of history. Now let your breath match it. In, out, slow and gentle. As the story continues, the cover-up was not only about what fell, it was about what followed. Within hours, the Army had reversed its announcement. The flying disc became a weather balloon. The debris was gathered, the field cleared, the public distracted. And yet, why announce a flying disc in the first place, if only to retract it? Mistakes happen, yes, but some mistakes reveal more than they conceal. Perhaps the first announcement was the truth, and the retraction the lie. Perhaps in that brief window, the world glimpsed honesty, before secrecy swept in. Think about it. A press release from the military stating they had recovered a flying disc. Not a journalist's rumor, not a civilian's exaggeration. An official statement. Why say it if it wasn't real? And once said, why erase it so quickly? The dance of disclosure and denial began that day. A pattern repeated across decades, across countless UFO encounters. Reveal, retract, admit, deny. A game of shadows played endlessly in the skies and in our minds. But shadows cannot erase the stars, and Roswell remains a star, burning at the center of the UFO mystery. Picture it now. The desert quiet. The crash site cleared. Soldiers gone, trucks vanished. Only wind remains, whispering through sagebrush. Yet the silence feels full. The ground holds memory. The sky holds secrets. And as you listen, drifting deeper, you too hold those secrets. They settle in your thoughts like dust on the desert floor. Fine, quiet, impossible to sweep away. Ask yourself, what if it really was a visitor? What if the first contact already happened, not in the future, but in the past? Would we even know? Or would it always be hidden, disguised as myth, dismissed as fantasy? That is the power of Roswell. It is both story and silence, both fact and doubt, both revelation and denial. And in that duality, something strange happens. We begin to feel not only curiosity, but recognition. Because deep inside, part of us already knows. The universe is too vast for us to be alone. The skies are too wide for only human craft. The stars are too ancient to belong to us alone. Roswell becomes a mirror, reflecting not just what may have happened, but what we fear, what we hope, what we sense in our bones. Close your eyes a little deeper now. Picture the mirror. Picture yourself looking into it. And what you see is not only desert sand, but endless galaxies. What you see is not only a crash, a reminder that the story of humanity is larger than we think. Perhaps that is why Roswell endures. Because it is not only about evidence, or bodies, or wreckage. It is about a whisper from the cosmos, carried into our history. A whisper that says you are not alone. And that whisper, once heard, can never be unheard. It stays with us, night after night, dream after dream. Tonight as you rest, let it stay with you. Let it soften your thoughts. Let it guide you gently into sleep. Roswell may remain unsolved, but in its mystery there is comfort. Comfort in knowing the universe is greater, wider, stranger than we imagined. Comfort in sensing that somewhere, someone may be watching the same stars, wondering about us. Breathe slowly. Let the mystery hold you. Let the desert cradle you. And drift softly into the space where truth and dream become one. The desert does not forget. Winds may sweep across the plains. Rains may carve new channels through the earth. Grass may wither, then grow again. But the ground remembers. Every step, every fall, every fragment carries its memory into the soil. And so it is with Roswell. Though soldiers carried away the wreckage, though trucks rolled through the night, though witnesses were silenced, the land remembers. The people remember. The story remains. And with each passing decade, the story grows. New voices emerge. Retired officers speak, no longer bound by fear. Civilians share what they saw, what they heard, what they were told to forget. Researchers gather, compare, assemble the puzzle. And still, the picture remains incomplete. Why? Because the pieces are scattered. Deliberately scattered, some say. Consider the military's shifting explanations. First, a disc, then a balloon. Later, Project Mogul. Each explanation designed not to explain fully, but to quiet curiosity, to close the door before more could be asked. But doors left half closed or noticed. The world peered through the crack, and what it saw did not look like a balloon. Pause here. Inhale slowly. Hold it for a moment. Exhale gently. Let your body soften. Now imagine the crack widening, a sliver of truth slipping through, a faint beam of light in the dark. This is Roswell, not a solved case, but an open doorway. Step closer. One testimony speaks of beams with strange markings, symbols, geometric, not like any written language. Another tells of debris that resisted fire, resisted cutting, resisted bending, and yet weighed almost nothing. Another of memory foil, crumpled and released, snapping back to perfect form. Materials we struggle to replicate even today. Were these simply misremembered fragments of ordinary balloon material, or were they glimpses of technology from elsewhere? The question lingers. And then, the stories of bodies, small, fragile, not quite human, carried quickly away. Always whispered, never shouted, but when whispers last 70 years, they begin to carry weight. Skeptics dismiss them, believers collect them. The truth floats between. Imagine those whispers now, moving through the dark like the desert wind. Soft, persistent, unending. They drift through time, carrying us back to that July night, to the moment of impact, to the hush of soldiers, to the strange, uneasy quiet that follows revelation. And as they drift, they find you here, in this moment, listening, breathing, drifting. The whispers are not meant to frighten you. They are meant to guide you, to remind you that history is not as neat as textbooks suggest. That truth is not always loud. Sometimes truth is quiet, hidden, patient. Roswell teaches us this. That some truths arrive disguised as mysteries. That some mysteries endure because they are too large, too strange, too disruptive to be fully revealed. But even when hidden, they leave traces. Think of light passing through clouds. It scatters, it dims, but it is still there. Roswell is that light, scattered, dimmed, but never extinguished. And in the night, under the stars, we sense it. That sense is what pulls people back to the story, decade after decade. Not just the debris, not just the reports, but the feeling that something extraordinary touched our world and left before we could understand. That our skies are not ours alone. What would change? Would fear spread? Would faith crumble? But it failed in memory, because memory is resilient. And so the story survives. Not in headlines, not in official records, but in voices like this one, drifting into the night. Carried across time, whispered to you now. By hearing it, you carry it forward, and in carrying it, you honor those who first saw, who first wondered, who first knew that something strange had come to Roswell. Breathe deeply now. Let the story settle within you, not as fear, but as wonder. Not as chaos, but as calm. For mystery is not the enemy of peace. Mystery is the cradle of imagination, the womb of curiosity, the gentle hum beneath the silence of the stars. Let that hum cradle you now. Roswell remains unsolved. And yet, in its unsolved nature, it offers you rest. Because not every question needs an answer tonight. Some questions are meant to carry you softly into sleep. And as you drift, the desert drifts with you. The wind carries the whispers. The stars keep watch. Night stretches endlessly over the desert. Above, stars glow like ancient candles, their light traveling across millions of years to touch this single moment. Below, silence spreads across the sand, broken only by the soft chorus of crickets and the breath of the wind. And in that silence, the questions rise. What really fell at Roswell? Was it a balloon, as the official record insists? A simple, mundane accident cloaked in unnecessary secrecy? Or was it something else, something beyond? The truth seems to move like those stars, visible yet distant, always just out of reach. Listen carefully. The desert has its own language, not spoken with words, but with stillness, with space, with memory. It tells us that something did fall, something that left marks too strange to be forgotten, something that drew men in uniforms from across the country to secure, to retrieve, to silence. Think about that for a moment. If it were only a balloon, why the urgency? Why the secrecy? Why the shifting story? First, we have a flying disc. Then, it was a weather balloon. Later, it was part of Project Mogul. Each layer of explanation feels less like clarity and more like smoke. Smoke meant to obscure, not reveal. And yet, smoke suggests fire. The fire here is truth, hidden but burning. Many witnesses, decades later, still spoke of the wreckage. Light as balsa wood, yet unbreakable. Sheets of strange metal that returned to form no matter how folded. Symbols etched across beams, glowing faintly in the desert sun. Close your eyes and see it. Imagine holding such a fragment in your hand. It bends, but then it does not. It feels both fragile and indestructible. A paradox in your palm. Would you believe your own senses? Or would you question yourself, the way so many were told to? Forget what you saw. Say nothing. It was only a balloon, but truth resists silence. It lingers in the corners of memory, in the places where imagination meets certainty. And when the night is quiet, that truth whispers back. Breathe in slowly. Hold. Exhale gently. Let your body sink deeper. Now picture the crash site. The earth torn, the sand scorched, the fragments scattered wide. Civilians stumble upon it first, wide-eyed, uncertain. They call for the sheriff. The sheriff calls the base. And then the soldiers arrive. They move with purpose. Trucks roll in. Officers bark orders. Civilians are pushed away, warned, threatened. In hours, the site is cleared. The wreckage disappears. But the memory remains. Those civilians never forgot what they saw. Their voices trembled when they told the story. Some recounted strange writing, others the unusual feel of the material. Many carried the weight of silence for years, afraid of ridicule, afraid of punishment. Yet when old age arrived, when the fear faded, they spoke again, and their words aligned. Different people, different times, the same details. The cover-up was strong, but memory was stronger. Now, let your breath steady. Feel the calm of the desert night, and imagine for a moment that it was not human technology at all. Imagine that it was a craft from beyond, that it traveled light years, crossing distances we cannot yet fathom, only to fall here, in a quiet corner of New Mexico. Why here? Why then? Some say it was chance, a storm, a malfunction. Others say it was deliberate, a message, a test, a first step into contact.
Either way, it was not the end, because from Roswell forward, the world began to change. UFO sightings surged, government programs deepened, the public's curiosity grew. The seed of wonder was planted. Even if the wreckage was hidden, the idea was not. And ideas, once planted, are impossible to uproot. That is Roswell's true power. Not just the fragments, not just the reports,
But the awakening it stirred.
an awakening that told humanity, the skies are not empty. Feel that thought now. Let it settle in your mind as gently as the desert breeze. The skies are not empty. If Roswell was a balloon, then it was an ordinary story
Buried under extraordinary imagination.
But if Roswell was something more, then it is the most extraordinary story buried under ordinary lies. Either way, the story endures. And you, lying here, listening, are part of it.
Your mind drifts on the same currents as those who first looked up
In 1947 and wondered.
Your breath falls in rhythm with the night,
As theirs once did.
and perhaps that is the final mystery of Roswell.
Not only what crashed, but how it connects us.
How it draws us together, decade after decade, in wonder, in curiosity, in shared searching.
The truth may never be fully known, but the search itself is a kind of truth. And as you search, you rest.
Let your eyelids grow heavy. Let your thoughts float outward like stars across the sky.
Roswell remains unsolved, but in that unsolved space there is peace. Peace in not needing every answer tonight. Peace in the knowledge that mystery is eternal. And mystery, like sleep, arrives when we surrender. So surrender now. Let the desert winds carry you. Let the stars above keep their silent watch. Let the whispers of Roswell cradle you as you drift, slowly, deeply, into rest.
The desert holds secrets. By day its sands shimmer with heat, stretching into horizons that seem endless. By night, it becomes another world entirely. A black sea, scattered with diamonds of light, each star a silent witness to the events of 1947. In that year, something extraordinary touched down here. Something that refuses to fade from human memory. Roswell is not simply a story of debris. It is a story of people. People who saw. People who heard. People who were told to forget. Imagine yourself as one of them. You are a rancher. Your land is vast, and your days are quiet. Then one morning you ride out and notice something strange. Shards scattered across the ground, glinting in the sunlight. You dismount, crouch low, and pick up a piece. It feels light, too light. You bend it, fold it, and it snaps back instantly, as though untouched. Your heart quickens. What is this? It is not wood, not steel, not anything you've seen. You gather what you can and bring it into town. And then, everything changes. The military arrives. Faces stern, voices sharp. They collect what you found. They tell you not to speak. You are confused, intimidated, silenced. This is how the Roswell story began. Not with governments, not with scientists, but with ordinary eyes meeting extraordinary things. Now, breathe deeply. Let your body rest as you imagine that scene. The rancher's weathered hands holding strange metal. The sheriff standing bewildered. The sudden rush of soldiers, trucks, orders. It unfolds like a dream, and yet it was real. At first, the Army Air Force confirmed it. A flying disc. That was the headline in the Roswell Daily Record. The words leapt from the page, igniting imaginations everywhere. But then, within 24 hours, the story changed. Now it was a weather balloon. A sudden reversal, announced with photographs of men holding scraps of torn balloon fabric. Posed for the press. Why the contradiction? One day, a flying disc. The next, a balloon. The public was expected to accept this reversal without question. But people remembered. Witnesses remembered. And their memories did not match the balloon story. Listen carefully. The truth lingers in contradictions. Decades later, testimonies surfaced. Family members of officers admitted their loved ones had spoken privately of something not from this world. Morticians recalled being asked for child-sized coffins, with orders wrapped in silence. Civilians described beings with markings like hieroglyphs, impossible to explain away as balloon fragments. Close your eyes and picture those markings. Symbols, glowing faintly, etched in patterns no one could translate. Were they letters? Numbers? A language unknown? Perhaps they were instructions. Perhaps they were names. Perhaps they were songs from a world too far to hear. The cover-up was thorough, but not perfect. Pieces of the truth leaked like light through cracks in a door. Not enough to flood the room, but enough to suggest what lies beyond. Consider the larger pattern. Roswell was not the first sighting. It was not the last. Throughout history, across cultures, skies have held mysteries. From the fiery chariots of ancient texts to the airships of the 1800s, humans have always looked upward and seen more than clouds. But Roswell was different. It came at a moment when technology was rising, when humanity had just entered the atomic age. It was as though the universe chose that precise moment to remind us, you are not alone. And perhaps that reminder was too soon. Perhaps those in power feared what it would do to the world. Fear of panic, fear of loss of control, fear of shifting power. So the story was buried. Officially, it became mundane, quiet, forgettable. But people did not forget. Because mystery cannot be erased. It can only be postponed. And Roswell became the seed of something larger. From its shadow grew decades of questions, of sightings, of whispered government projects. It became the cornerstone of UFO lore, the heartbeat of modern ufology. Think of it like this. If Roswell had been nothing, we would not still be speaking of it now. If Roswell had been a balloon, it would have been forgotten in weeks. But Roswell was more. It lingered. It lived. It captured imagination, fear, hope, and wonder all at once. That is why you feel its pull tonight, even as your eyes grow heavy. Because Roswell is not just a case. It is a mirror that reflects our deepest questions. Who else is out there? Have they already been here? Do they watch us still? Let those questions hover in your mind. Not sharp, not demanding, but soft, like clouds drifting across the night sky. Questions that do not need answers tonight. Questions that can simply exist, carrying you gently toward sleep. Now picture the desert once more. The crash site cleared. The soldiers gone. The ranchers' fields quiet again. But beneath that quiet, the memory burns. And above that quiet, the stars keep shining, ancient, unblinking. If you listen closely, you can almost hear them whisper. The truth is still here, waiting, watching. And as you close your eyes, you drift toward it. Not in fear, but in wonder. Not in urgency, but in peace. Because Roswell's greatest gift is not terror, not confusion, but the reminder that we are part of something vast. That life is not limited to this one small world. That mystery is woven into the fabric of existence. So let mystery carry you now. Breathe slowly. Sink deeper. Let the story fade into the rhythm of your heart. And as you drift, remember, in 1947, something fell. Something real. Something unexplainable. And perhaps, even now, its echoes move through the night.
The silence of Roswell did not last forever. Though the desert returned to its stillness, though newspapers moved on to other stories, the whispers remained. They moved from house to house, from diner booths to family tables, carried on quiet voices. And slowly, Decade by decade, the whispers grew louder. What really crashed in 1947? This question never went away. It echoed in the minds of those who had seen fragments with their own eyes. It lingered in the memories of soldiers who carried boxes into hangars, who signed papers that bound their tongues, who felt the weight of secrets pressing against their chests. It haunted the children of officers who overheard things never meant for young ears. Not from this world, they remembered their fathers saying, not human. Even as official statements dismissed the story, the witnesses held on. They aged, they grew gray. And as their time drew shorter, many chose to speak. Testimonies emerged, sworn accounts of what was found in the desert. Some described the craft itself, metallic, seamless, curved in ways beyond human engineering of the 1940s. Others spoke of bodies, small, fragile, with large heads and dark, unblinking eyes. The stories were not uniform, but they shared too many patterns to ignore. Pause for a moment. Close your eyes and imagine being one of those first responders, walking through sand, still scorched from impact. You approach twisted fragments that shimmer under moonlight. And then, perhaps, you glimpse something more, a form lying still, not quite human, not quite anything you've known. How would you feel? Shock, fear, awe, maybe all at once. The Roswell cover-up has always been as much about emotion as evidence. The fear of what discovery might unleash, the awe of encountering the unknown, the conflict between revealing the truth and protecting a fragile world still recovering from war. And so, stories were buried, files were locked, explanations were rehearsed. But truth has a way of resurfacing. In the 1970s, researchers began to piece together interviews. They collected scraps of memory, like archaeologists of the mind, digging carefully through layers of silence. The picture that emerged was not simple, but it was powerful. Roswell was no balloon. It was something else. By the 1990s, even the U.S. Air Force revisited the case. Their reports, long, technical, carefully worded, attempted to explain away the bodies as test dummies dropped from planes. But the timeline didn't fit. Witnesses knew what they had seen. And the public was no longer so quick to accept official answers. The age of secrecy was breaking. The age of questioning was rising. Consider this. Roswell became more than a single event. It became a symbol of doubt, a symbol of hidden truths, a symbol of humanity's deep hunger to know what lies beyond. Even now, as you listen, as you drift, Roswell stands as a doorway. One step leads into the official story. Balloons, dummies, mundane explanations. Another step leads into the mystery. A crash, a craft, beings not of Earth. Both paths exist. Both have defenders. But in the quiet, in the stillness of night, it is the second path that captures the imagination. Because deep down, we sense it. The universe is too vast for us to be alone. The sky is too filled with wonders for every light to be a star. The story is too insistent to be only fantasy. Now breathe slowly. Let your mind wander. Picture Roswell, not just as a town, not just as a date in history, but as a threshold. A moment when humanity brushed against something greater, then stepped back in fear. Imagine if the truth had been told openly in 1947. How different might the world be today? Would our sciences have leapt decades ahead? Would our wars have lessened, knowing we were not the only ones under the stars? Would faith have deepened or shattered, confronted with neighbors from far beyond? No one can know, and perhaps that is why the truth was hidden. Not because it was false, but because it was too true, too heavy, too soon. The cover-up, in that sense, was not just about power. It was about timing. And so, the question remains, when will the timing be right? Each decade, more files are released. Each decade, more officials admit what once was unmentionable. Each decade, the veil grows thinner. And yet, Roswell remains unsolved. Perhaps it always will. Perhaps its purpose was never to be solved, but to awaken, to plant in us the seed of curiosity, the drive to look upward, the courage to wonder. For even now, as your eyes grow heavy, the desert still holds its secret. The sands of Roswell lie quiet under the stars, but beneath them is the memory of something extraordinary. And when the night grows deep, when the world falls still, that memory stirs. You can feel it now, can't you? Not fear, not panic, but the gentle awareness that mystery is real, that wonder is near, that we are part of something vaster than we have been told. So let Roswell be your companion tonight. Not as a puzzle to solve, not as a headline to chase, but as a lullaby of the unknown. A reminder that you can rest, even as the universe keeps its secrets. The stars will watch over you. The desert will keep its silence. And somewhere, the truth waits, patient, timeless, eternal. Sleep and drift, and let the mystery hold you. The desert does not hurry. It keeps its secrets as it has for centuries, holding them beneath its sand and stone. Roswell is no different. Whatever fell there in 1947, whether craft or balloon, beings or mannequins, it has become something larger than itself. It has become a story, and stories are powerful. They endure beyond metal, beyond memory, beyond time. Roswell's story has circled the globe. It has been told in whispered conversations, in grainy documentaries, in late-night radio shows, and in the quiet voices of those who cannot forget what they saw. Some believe with unwavering certainty, others doubt with equal conviction, and in between, millions simply wonder. But wonder is enough, because wonder opens the mind. Wonder prepares the heart. Wonder reminds us that the universe is wider than we imagine. Think of it. One small town, one summer night, one mysterious crash, and suddenly, the boundaries of possibility shift. Suddenly, humanity glimpses a horizon farther than before. And though the answers remain hidden, the questions have never gone away. What really fell in Roswell? Who walked among those wreckage fields? And why, after all these years, does the silence remain? Perhaps the silence is its own answer, a reminder that not all truths arrive when we demand them, a lesson that patience is part of discovery, a sign that the cosmos reveals itself in whispers, not in shouts. And so, as you lie here now, listening, breathing slowly, eyes heavy, let Roswell be more than a question. Let it be a companion, a reminder that mystery itself is a kind of gift. For in mystery, we find humility. In mystery, we find awe. In mystery, we find the gentle lullaby of the unknown. Sleep does not ask for certainty. Sleep only asks for surrender. So surrender now, not to fear, not to doubt, but to the vastness of what is possible. Somewhere above you, stars continue their eternal glow. Planets circle in silence. Moons drift in their patient arcs. And beyond them, perhaps, other beings dream as you dream. The universe is not empty. It is alive. And Roswell, whether secret or legend, is a thread in that living fabric. So let your thoughts drift like desert winds across the dunes. Let them fade like footprints erased by time. Let the story of Roswell carry you, gently, into rest. Because the truth is not just out there. The truth is also in here, in your dreams, in your wonder, in your quiet surrender to the night. Breathe in the silence. Breathe out the weight of questions. And let go.
The desert keeps watch. The stars keep watch. And as you close your eyes, you too are kept safe within the mystery. Sleep now, and if you dream of Roswell, know this: you are not alone. You never were. You never will be.